So when I was a freshman in college, my college roommate and I went out to get some pizza. And it was one evening, and after we had finished having our pizza, we started heading back to the campus. We were walking, we weren't very far from the campus. It was after dark, probably about 8 o'clock or so at this point. And as we got to an corner at the intersection, there was a car that was sitting there, and the driver of the car motioned for us to cross. So we did. As we entered the intersection, the driver of the car hit his gas pedal, running his car into my friend and knocking him to the ground. The guy in the car and his friends then drove off yelling racial epithets as they drove off. He wasn't injured, but clearly we were shook up. So we went back to the dorm and began to process what had just happened with our friends. And to the person, white friends, black friends, Latino friends, the consensus was equal. We all should get in our cars and we should go find the people who just did this. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed, or I wouldn't be here today. So that night I was talking to my mother and I was sharing with her this incident, and she began to, first of all, she was quiet, and then she began to remind me of some of the things that she had tried to instill in me as I was growing up. Obviously, she didn't anticipate at the early age of 18 that I would be facing some of those things she had tried to teach me, but I was. And so she began to reiterate some of those things again. So about a week later, I received a letter in the mail, an envelope in the mail from my mother. And to be honest with you, I hope that it was a check with some money. It was college, right? So for those of you who are too young to know what checks are, it was this little thing you had to fill out. You know what I'm saying? It made you think you had money when sometimes you didn't, but you had something that you could use to spend. So I was hoping that hoping that she was sending me a check. But it was not, actually. It was this note. And the note simply said, "A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor." A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. I had no idea at that moment that my mother was giving me a gift that would pay over and over and over again in my life. Now, not for sentinel events like the one I just described for you, but for everyday events, everyday challenges that I would face. I would be reminded that every one of them had the potential to make me a more skillful sailor. Well, today, I want to pay that gift forward from my mother to you and remind you that as a leader, a smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. My only question for you today is, what are you going to do with the gift that I'm giving you? What are you going to do with this gift? Again, my name is Tony Moore, and I am so excited to be here with you this morning. When Tom called, he actually said to me, "Hey, Tony, here's the deal. I'm bringing together a group of," and I quote, "rock stars. Would you like to be a part of it?" Of course, obviously I said yes, right? So I want you to know that I'm going to hold him to that, and I'm going to find out if I am actually in the room with rock stars. So let me start by saying, are there any rock stars in the house? Okay, well, that's all right, good. I wondered if there was any here. For those of you who haven't had your coffee yet this morning, that's okay. I'm going to be your caffeine today. I'll take care of it for you this morning. But in all seriousness, over the course of my 25 years, just in executive positions, I had the privilege, as Nate said in the announcement, I had the privilege of leading 5 mergers and 2 organizational turnarounds. And what that means is, when I look back on my career, I realized that there were 2 common threads. 2 threads that I believe I also have in common with you, no matter where you're leading. Number 1 is just that. I have had to lead during times of significant change. Now, because I had the privilege of working for a CEO who was involved in turnarounds, I was often running toward the storm. But you are today operating at a time of unprecedented volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, any one of which could derail you as a leader. So you too, like I, are leading at a time of pretty significant change. So that's thread number one. Thread number two, when I look back across my career, is that every one of those leadership positions was an opportunity to leave that organization better than the day that I arrived. Let me repeat that, because this is the thread that we have in common. An opportunity to leave the organization better than it was the day I arrived. You too have that opportunity, which of course simply brings us back to the gift. A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. So whatever storm you might be navigating today, or maybe you're not navigating a storm today, let me tell you, from those of us who have and are, your storm is coming, because it's the way it works. Your storm is coming. So my hope today, in giving you the gift that my mother gave me, is to give you 5 things that I believe can help anchor you during the storm. I've tried to make it real easy because they're all in the form of 5 simple quotes, each of which I'll share with you. But here's the deal. Some of the things I'm going to share with you today, if you're not doing them, they won't be there when the storm starts. You see, many times, what I found is that oftentimes during the storm, I was not always at my best. So therefore, I needed to be doing things when we weren't in a storm so that those people who were with me in the storm would trust me. So the things that we're going to talk about, it becomes necessary that you're doing those things right now so that when the storm is up on you, people will want to be there with you. Because I don't know about you, but I've had to remind my teams multiple times. Some days, I am the person that I am trying to become. And other days, I am the person that I am. And it's in those times that I need your grace. When I'm being the person who Tony really is, not the person that Tony is trying to become. You probably can't relate to that, though. So, with that in mind, are you ready to get into this, rock stars? Yeah, oh my goodness. Are you ready to get into this? All right, there we go. So here's what I'm going to need from you. I am just like any other speaker, and that is that I want to make sure that whatever I'm talking about actually makes sense to you. I'm not asking you to agree, just simply to let me know that what I said actually made sense. And I'm going to do that by asking you a very simple question, and that question is going to come up on the screen in a second. Is that cool? And when I say, is that cool, I want to hear you say, that's cool. All right, it's going to come up here sooner or later, right? I think I'm having some issues. That's cool. All right, so is that cool? One more time, is that cool? All right, so what is quote number 1? What got you here won't get you there. What got you here won't get you there. So let me ask you a question. Did you know that in 1890, there were 13,000 businesses supporting the horse and carriage industry? 13,000. May not come as a surprise to you. It was, in fact, 1890. What may come as a surprise is that 83 years earlier, the first engine had been tested. So 83 years after the testing of the first engine, there are 13,000 leaders who are still doing business as usual. 13,000 buggy whip makers who think people will be buying our buggy whips for the rest of our lives. But it wouldn't matter, because sooner or later, we would be driving cars. And what got them here was not sufficient to get them there. So let me ask you a question. I want you to get a number in your head. There were 13,000 businesses supporting the horse and carriage industry. How many of those businesses do you think are left today? Don't yell it out, just get a number in your head. If you got a number, can you say that's cool? Oh, that sounds like some people aren't playing. If you got a number in your head, can you say that's cool? Thank you, all right. So I'm going to put some numbers on the screen here, a range of numbers, and then I'm going to ask if your number was in that range. So is that cool? All right, so if your number was, but if you believe there are today between 1,000 and 13,000 of those businesses yet left, would you say that's cool? Oh, bless your heart. That's cool, but it's wrong. Either that or you just don't want to play any longer. Let me get my that's cool out of the way and then I don't have to play anymore. That's exactly what I would have done. How many of you number was between 500 and 999? Would you say that's cool? If your number was between 100 and 499 that are left today, would you say that's cool? Let me let you in on a little secret. It may or may not be the last number that's on the screen. For those of you who are waiting, we just wait till he gets, did this in school. I remember, you just wait, and then she'll put the right number up there. So play along. How many of you that your number was between 10 and 99 would you say that's cool? Okay, so a few more of you. So raise your hand if it was less than 10 that you had. All right, if your number is, if you would keep them up for just a second so we can see who wins. If your number is 9, put your hand down. 8, put your hand down. 7, 6, 5, put your hand down. 4, put your hand down. 3, put your hand down. 2, put your hand down. Oh my gosh, no, 0, put your hand down. 1, stand up. Can I get a that's cool for her? It actually is 1. Way to go. Yeah, 1 business, the Timken Company in Ohio. They supported the horse and carriage industry. They are in business today. Get this, they did that because they recognized that they were not in the horse and carriage industry, they were in the transportation industry. They have now evolved beyond that to say that they are in the business of movement. So this is a company that has gone from supporting the horse and carriage industry to making ball bearings for wind turbines. What got you here won't get you there. Unless, of course, you are continually examining your relevance in the marketplace. Unless you are continually asking and answering some very, very tough questions. So many times when I would go into organizations where we were going to be leading some sort of change effort, whether it was we're merging with someone or acquiring someone, or I was joining the team and there needed to be a significant change, even within my own department, I knew that there were things that we had to focus on. And I want to share with you 4 quick questions, a little exercise that we would do that would help us figure out what are the things that we need to be focusing our attention on. Because here's the deal. In the midst of the volatility, uncertainty, and complexity and ambiguity of this environment, you can't afford to waste your time on anything that you shouldn't be focused on. Nevertheless, I often found that organizations, that my own teams, even under my leadership, we were focused on the wrong things. Things that used to be the right thing, buggy whips, but now we needed to be making ball bearings. So number 1, what are the things that we do well and are valued by our customer? And when I say do well, and let me say this about all 4 of these questions, there has to be data to support that you do it well. I'm not talking about stuff you think you do well because you saw so-and-so at the mall and they told you how much they like that thing you do. I'm talking about some hard data that says we deliver superior results in this area and our customers value it. So what are the things that we do well as evidenced by we deliver superior results and are also valued by our customer? Is that cool? All right, number 2. What are the things that we don't do well and are valued by our customers? In other words, what are those things where we do not deliver superior results, yet our customers value it? Now, I'm not at all saying that you need to be doing those things, but I am saying we have to at least recognize, are there some things that I don't do well? Either A, I don't have the competency to do it well, or B, I don't have the resources to do it well. Because remember, I want to focus my attention on the things that I need to be focused on that are going to keep me relevant today and tomorrow. Anyone ever read that book, Who Moved the Cheese? Yeah. Here's what I say. I don't want to be the one who responds when the cheese is moved. I want to be the one who moves the cheese. That's who I want to be. I want to be that company. I want to be the one who we move the cheese and y'all all come chasing after us, not sitting around waiting to see the cheese get moved. That was free. It wasn't part of the speech today, but you can have it. So number 3, things we do well and are not valued by the customer. And you probably don't have any of these. I mean, things that you just are so proud of, and you do it so well, but nobody cares. No one. I was doing some consulting work with a company that was so proud of their newsletter. Proud. And when I say proud, I mean proud. It wasn't generating any income. It was just, have you seen its 4-color? Have you seen the quality of the articles, all of which the people who write the articles scramble at the last minute to try to get finished because they've got a million things they're going to get done, but we got to get this newsletter out. So here's my question, because we walked through this exercise and put all these things in these boxes. How many people are reading your newsletter? Everybody. Okay, well, now, everybody's not reading your newsletter. I mean, it's not possible that every month everyone reads that newsletter. Well, we don't really have any hard numbers, but we're sure that people love our newsletter. So they're doing it very, very well, but the more they started to track it, which they did after we met, they realized very few people cared about it. So much so that they didn't have to announce we're no longer sending out the newsletter. They just stopped sending it. And no one called and said, where's my 4-color, well-written newsletter? Nobody said, where's my buggy whip? Nobody asked. But yet, and still, it was precious to them. It was special. So what are those things that we do well that are not valued by the customer? And finally, what are the things that we don't do well and are not valued by the customer? Because sometimes we make a decision to do something that at the time makes good sense. We work really, really hard at trying to become competent at it, but we never do. And our customers don't care about it anyway. Nevertheless, my team is tied up doing things that have no value, and they don't do it very well. Sometimes we've had to let go of things simply because there's someone else in the marketplace that does it better than we do. Let them have it. Let them have it. Let's take our strengths as identified by the competencies we have, where we deliver superior results, and we have the financial resources to do it, and let's let that be the foundation on which we build. And then we begin to let go of some of those other things. Is that cool? Yeah. So I'll tell you this. The easy part of this exercise is the exercise. I mean, imagine all 4 of these blocks up, listing everything in one of them. The hard part is executing. The hard part is when there's something in one of those boxes that somebody loves. Maybe it was your founder. I worked at an organization that had been founded by a family. Since when I got there, when I arrived, the mother and father had passed on, but the kids were, there were still 2 children and then a cousin. They were all on the board. And so every change that we made, they were things that had been sacred to that family. I mean, they could remember when they were with their father scoping out that new location, which today, at that point, 30 years later, was losing money because it was no longer relevant. So what I'm suggesting to you is the hard part of this is letting go. Letting go of the things that you find special and letting go of the things that perhaps other people find special. It is going to cause a significant amount of discomfort, which brings us to our next quote. Leadership and discomfort are inseparable. Leadership and discomfort are inseparable. As a matter of fact, I would say if you don't have moments of discomfort, you are probably not leading. Do you remember when you first decided to be a leader? Do you remember when you used to watch the other leader and you would wonder to yourself, what in the hell does she do all day? Right? You sit there like, I could send out emails and get on conference calls. And then they said, get in the game, sport. And you found out exactly what it was like to lead. You see, the part of leadership that they didn't tell us was that it is incredibly uncomfortable. But being anchored during the storm is going to require you to remember that discomfort comes with the position. That I have oftentimes, even in my coaching practice today, have to say to CEOs, welcome to the CEO suite. I hear you. And it is supposed to feel like that. Now we need to figure out how to navigate through it. So that discomfort is always there. And it's really there when you've walked through that exercise. So let's talk about one of those places where there can be some discomfort. I hope some of you are like me, are old enough in this room to know who that gentleman to your right is. Anybody can tell me who that is? Michael Jordan, yes, sir. Arguably the greatest athlete in the world, absolutely the greatest basketball player in the world. That's cool. Okay, there we go. That's cool. And he did this. He said that's cool. Absolutely. Now, to be honest with you, my wife and I were at a job in Cleveland, and I made that statement, and I got booed. You know, because he torched them, and then they had LeBron. So I understand. But the bottom line is, greatest basketball player of all time. Does anyone know who this other gentleman is? Karl Malone. And someone said his nickname. Who said that? The mailman. And why did they call him the mailman? Because he delivers. I have always thought if I was going to be an employee and they gave out t-shirts, that's the one I want. Tony Moore is the mailman. Why do they call him the mailman? Because that brother always delivers, right? Let me tell you a quick little story. So 1998 NBA Finals, Game 1, Sunday afternoon game. With the score tied and about 13 seconds to go on the clock, Karl Malone gets fouled. He steps up to the free throw line to shoot 2 shots. Obviously, if he hits 1, they go up by 1. If he hits 2, they're now up by 2. Prior to getting the ball from the referee, Scottie Pippen, one of the Bulls players, steps up to him and whispers in his ear. And this is what he says. You know, Karl, the mailman doesn't deliver on Sundays. Let me tell you something. Karl didn't miss 1 shot, he missed both shots. I am in no way trying to suggest that the reason he missed those shots was because of what Scottie Pippen said. But I am comfortable saying this. What Scottie Pippen said tapped into something he already believed to be true. You see, the critic that we have to silence in order to lead during times of change and storm is the one that's in my head. It looks like the board member, it looks like the employee, it looks like all these external forces, but it starts right here. That's the one that I have to silence in order to lead in the middle of a storm. Is that cool? Yeah. So let me tell you how this story ends. Dennis Rodman gets the rebound, he's one of the Bulls, and they call timeout. Now there's somewhere around 10 seconds, 9 seconds left to go on the clock, and they head to the sideline to draw up a play. The Utah Jazz are on defense, and so they're coming up with a play that we all know what they need to do. Keep Michael Jordan from getting the ball. Simple. Well, that's the simple task. The Bulls, we know what they're talking about. How are we going to get Michael Jordan the ball? So they come back out. Now my question is, I don't know how Michael Jordan ends up with the ball because the plan is don't let him get it, but he does. And with about 3 seconds on the clock, he shoots, swish, nothing but nets. They win that game and they go on to win that series. Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time. But here is what he said. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. The ability to silence that critic that's in his head. Your ability to silence that critic. It is perfectly okay to be nervous during the time of a storm. I remember talking to my daughter who was about to walk on stage and give a speech. And this is what she said to me. Daddy, I'm scared. And I didn't say what you thought I would say. Because what I said was this. You should be scared. You are about to walk out on stage in front of a bunch of strangers and share your innermost thoughts. That should scare you to death. But here's the deal. You wrote the speech. You practice the speech, and in spite of your fear, go deliver the speech. Be scared, but take your butt out there and do what you do. You have got to be able to silence that internal critic. Is that cool? All right. The next quote. People are the bridge between strategy and execution. Leaders either support or destroy the bridge. So for all of our plans and all of our strategy and all of that stuff, the bridge between that plan and the execution of that plan are the people that we lead. And every one of our actions impacts that bridge. It took me a while to realize that, to be honest with you, because I don't know how you got in your first leadership position, but all they did was pat me on the back and tell me to get in there. And I said, well, what do I do when I get in there? Well, you just do what you've been doing. So that's what I went in there to do. I'll do what I've always done. Now, I've had some examples of leadership. There's really only two. One is a genius leader. You probably know the genius leader. The genius leader has all the answers for everyone. The genius leader, we wait for the genius leader to come down from the mountaintop with his tablets of stone and tell us all what to do. Now you're probably thinking, nobody leads like that. It's you. See, that's why you don't think there's one out there. Somebody next to you is like, yeah, this guy right here is the genius leader. So I wasn't going to be the genius leader because I didn't have all those answers. But the other leader, which is the one I adopted, is the super leader. And the super leader does everything for everybody. Now keep in mind, they told me to do what I've always done, which means I keep doing work. I was so much of a, let me tell you something, I was such a super leader that I even wore a super suit. Now you probably don't believe me, as you're looking at me like you doubt me, but hang on just a quick second. She's looking like you don't believe. Let me show you my cape from my super suit. This was my cape. And this is the, I'm gonna be honest, anybody ever seen The Incredibles with your kids? Some of you have. You remember that scene when Mr. Incredible puts on his super suit for the first time and his belly is hanging out? That's how mine looked this morning when I put it in. But so that's why I didn't wear it down here, because I didn't want to embarrass myself. But you can see my cape's a little tight and I can't hardly breathe, but I used to wear this back in the day when I was thin. Why? Because I was a super leader. And if you had a problem, I would just swoop in and take care of it for you. But here's where the problem occurred. The problem occurred when they rewarded me for all that good work. Because you know what the reward is for good work? More work. So pretty soon I had so many people I couldn't do everything for everybody. The other downside was what? No one was learning to lead. No one was learning to contribute to our success. I was fundamentally destroying the bridge that would take us from strategy to execution all by my actions. And so therefore I had to sit down with each of the members of my team and find out why we were failing. And I recognized that it wasn't them, it was me. There is something I'm doing that is not making you successful, that is not allowing you to be successful. Let me give you a real quick question. This one's free. Every time I take over a team, there are two questions I want them to answer for me. Number one, if there was one obstacle in your path today that if I removed it, you would immediately be more successful, what would it be? One obstacle. Tell me what that is. And if I can get that out of your way, you're saying you'll be more successful. One obstacle. Because you realize that our role as leaders is blocking and tackling. My job is to get obstacles out of your path so you can be successful, because that's going to make all of us successful. Second question, this is the other free one. Second question, if you had been appointed to this position, what three things would you focus on right now? In other words, what's important to you? What do you think we need to be doing as a department, as an organization? That was free. Back to this presentation. So I had to figure out a way to find out from those employees how I can help them. And this is what I ended up over time coming up with. 3 questions that are easy to remember, and you can think of it as start, stop, and continue. Start, stop, continue. So I meet with my direct reports on a regular basis. So once a quarter, I would ask them to do an exercise for me. And it would involve filling in the blank on these 3 statements. I would like Tony to start. I would like Tony to stop. I would like Tony to continue. And fill in the blank. What is something you'd like me to start doing, stop doing, and continue doing? Sometimes there was nothing. Sometimes there was one thing. But my question was designed to find out, am I supporting the bridge the way you need to be supported? Because anyone who has decided to follow me, I've now made a promise to them. And I don't want to break that promise. Start, stop, continue. The beauty of that is, I don't have to just say, how are you doing today? Everybody says fine. But if there's something I could start doing that would be good for you, tell me what it is. Maybe I can do it, maybe I can't do it. But here's the deal. If you ask me to start doing something that I can't do, at least I can tell you that I'm not able to do that. So you can quit wishing that that would happen. Because there's no way I can do it. But the reality is, most of the things that people would say to me, they were pretty small. And every time I moved one of those obstacles, they trusted me more. Is that cool? All right. How about our next quote? Culture is the soil in which everything in the organization lives or dies. Culture is the soil in which everything in the organization lives or dies. All of our efforts around mergers and acquisitions, all of our efforts in organizational turnarounds, any team that I've been a part of, at the end of the day, if our culture didn't support the outcomes we were trying to get, we never reached those outcomes. Even when we were doing well, we would always do better if there was a culture to support it. Unfortunately, it took me a while to realize that I needed to be deliberate and intentional about focusing on the culture. That it wasn't something we just talk about, but we actually need to have a way to actually focus on it. Because to not do so is the equivalent of deciding that you're going to plant a garden and not treating the soil before you plant the seeds. Granted, some of your flowers will grow because some will grow in spite of you. But you'll never get the garden of your dreams unless you first treat the soil. And let me take that a step further. If you're trying to grow roses, you treat the soil differently than if you're trying to grow tulips. So the culture I develop has to be connected to the outcomes I'm trying to get. What are we trying to accomplish? And do we have a culture that is designed to produce that for us? Now, one of the challenges around culture is that it tends to be thought of as something that's soft. So let me give you a couple of concrete things. First of all, think of culture as an ecosystem. And I'll spare you definitions and all of that. You can look it up if you don't know. That's the beauty of Google. But think of it as an ecosystem. And within that ecosystem, there are operational elements and there are relational elements. The relational elements tend to be the ones we think about. So let me start with the operational elements. Your process for communication is an operational element of your culture. How information gets throughout your organization is an operational element that speaks to your organization's culture. How you do coaching and correction is related to your culture. So those are operational things. How you make decisions, who gets to be involved in those decisions. My guess is, and I'm sure I'm right, that if I surveyed your team right now, they could tell me who gets to be involved in decisions and who doesn't get to be involved in decisions. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm simply saying, understand that it is a part of your culture that has to be given attention to depending on, remember what I said, what are the outcomes that you're trying to get. So if you have a communication process that doesn't get you the outcomes you need to get, you have to change the communication process because it's the link to the outcome. Stay with me. Relational elements of the culture, so that's operational. Relational elements of the culture. Think of your relational elements of the culture as being how we get along with each other, how we resolve conflict. Do we resolve conflict? Do we resolve conflict with certain people, but we don't resolve conflict when it's other people? So when you do it, we get all over you, but because she's a rock star, I knew you were, I could tell. Because she's a rock star, she can do whatever she wants to do. That is an element of your culture, right or wrong. If I say this is what I believe, and I allow her to violate that simply because she's good at her job, I am actually demonstrating to my team that I don't believe what I just said. Ooh. So think about it this way. Your goal is to get alignment between your values and the operational elements of your culture and the relational elements of your culture. Give you a quick example, if this will switch from here. So let's assume that one of your values is respect for all. Then you have to ask yourself, here's an operational element, decision making. When I'm making this and execute decisions, am I doing it in a way that demonstrates to the people I lead that I respect them? because that would create alignment. When I do coaching and correction, do I do it in a way that the people who I'm coaching and correcting would believe that I actually respect them? This is operationalizing the values, because it's ensuring that my behaviors are aligned with what I say I believe. And the reason that's important, what the research tells us, is that when there is alignment, there's increased trust. And when there's increased trust, there's increased engagement. And when there's increased engagement, there's improved outcomes. Alignment is the culture, outcomes is the result. Change the culture, change the outcomes. If I can get that alignment, I can actually improve my bottom line. Is that cool? I'll tell you another thing about culture. It is, in fact, a force multiplier. Now, what do I mean by force multiplier? Let's assume for a second, what's your name? I know your face. Are you a speaker today? Steve, my man Steve. Can we give Steve a round of applause? Yeah. There you go. That's it. So, Steve, let's say this, we walked out today, sorry, Steve, but we walked out today and you had a flat tire. We could all gather around and lift Steve's car, and he could change his tire. Now, I would be in traction. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm cramping up just thinking about lifting your car, Steve. But what I will tell you is we could accomplish the goal of lifting the car and the goal of changing the tire. Or we could take the jack out of his car and use it to lift the car, and it would make it easier. Why? Because it's a force multiplier. It reduces the amount of effort needed to get the outcome I'm after. Culture is a force multiplier. It reduces the amount of effort it takes to get the result that you're after. That's why it becomes so critically important. Culture is the soil in which everything in your organization lives or dies. Is that cool? And finally, who you are as a leader is more important than any competency you possess. Let me say that again. Who you are as a leader is far more important than any competency you possess. Let me see if I can demonstrate it. I want you to think for just a second about a leader who has had a positive impact on your life. It doesn't have to be someone who was in a job. It could be someone from a scout troop. It can be someone from your church. It could be a parent, a grandparent. But I want you to think about that person right now. Who is the person that when I ask that question, that's the person that comes to mind for you? I only ask that it be someone that you actually know. So I'm not talking about somebody who you admire. I'm talking about someone who actually you were engaged with and they positively impacted your life. If you have someone, would you say that's cool? That's cool. Oh, one more time. That's cool? That's cool. All right. So now I want you to think about this. What was it about that person that impacted you so positively? What did they do? What was it about them? Think about that for a second. What was it? You probably know immediately. I will tell you this. This I am willing to bet on, that if I surveyed every one of you, at least 95% of you would say that it was related to something that was character-driven and not competency-driven. It was not their ability to climb rocks that impressed you. It was the day they reached down from that rock and pulled you up. That's the one you remember. Because who you are is far more important than your competency. I found over the years, particularly in human resources, that if I move someone who has a competency issue, sometimes I can move them to a place where they can thrive. But if I move someone with a character issue, the character issue just travels right to the next place. It doesn't change. A little aside on that, which is why when we develop leaders, we need to focus on character development, not just competency development. See, we tend to assume character, and that's what gets us, that's how we end up with Enron. We assume character, so you end up being the smartest person in the room with no character, which is a dangerous person to have leading you. Character is so important. So let me say this last thing to you before I close. When I think about who is the leader who's had that kind of impact on me, it's easy. It is absolutely my mother. Hands down, has had the greatest impact on me as a person. And it is about her character. We were living briefly in Indiana. We had moved from Texas to Indiana to be near my mom. She was in Indianapolis. And I got the call from a CEO to come to Clearwater to help him with a turnaround. Proved to be my last one of those jobs, but to come down and help him with a turnaround of an organization. It was a national organization, but based out of Clearwater. And I said to him, I said, well, I left Austin, Texas. I left Austin to be near my mom, so the only way I'll take the job is if she's willing to retire and move to Florida with us. Otherwise, I believe I'm supposed to be here. And I hate Indiana. I don't know if you're from Indiana, but I did. I hated it. But my mom was there, so we're there. So we're there. It's cold, it's snowy, but we can talk about that afterwards. But I'm there, right? And so he says, not a problem. We happened to be down in Indianapolis. We were in South Bend, but we happened to be down in Indianapolis, and my mom and I went out to run some errands, and it gave me an opportunity to talk with her about it. So I told her about the job, and she said, wow, that just sounds like such a great opportunity for you. And I said, oh, absolutely. I said, but I told David that I wouldn't take the job unless you would retire and move to Florida with us. And these are her exact words. I said, so what do you think? She said, I think that you're not going to use that as your criteria to make this decision. You see, a man is supposed to leave his mother and his father and cleave to his wife, and the two become one flesh. And you have done that, so therefore you'll make the decision that's best for you and your wife and your children, not what's best for me. So what do you think? And all I could say was, yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's the leader who has impacted my life, my mother. Of course, seconds later, she said, but if you want me to retire and come to Florida, let's do it, baby. Let's get the yard sale signs out, right? I'm out of here. And she has since retired and moved down with us. Leadership is a gift. To ask people to follow you is that you're making a huge promise and they're making a huge commitment to you. These things that I've shared with you today, don't wait for the storms to come up on you. Do them now, so that when the storm is there, they'll know that they can trust you. They'll understand that. Is that cool? Thank you very much.